Hey, can everyone hear me? Something's wrong with my internet. Yeah. Let's try to define a function and see if it works. Cool. Are people trying this out? Again, a quick show of hands if people are trying this out or not.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Great. So let's do this, right? We had the list thing, right? 1, 3, 4, 7, 9. And I spoke about a mean or an average, right? Now, it doesn't have to be my list, or rather it shouldn't be my list, right? You're given any list, right? And you want to compute the average, right? So I'll do it in a very easy way this time, and we'll discuss the more difficult way of doing it eventually. Okay. Sorry guys, some value. Everyone's following what I'm doing, right? So I'll go more into why there is this thing here. But so far, all I have done is I have written def, which defines a function, avg, which is the name of the function. It's shorthand for average, right? And this here is the argument to the function, or what is the value with which we want to call the function, right? Or another way of putting it would be, this is the list for which we want to compute the average of the list, right? So I'll go slow on this one so that everyone follows along. What was the length of the list, people, if anyone remembers? Cool. This is all good so far. All I'm doing here is now, this is an expression and this is a variable. I'm assigning a value to the variable using the equal to. So we discussed variables, we discussed assignments, we discussed expressions. So you can see how all of it comes together now, right? So I have a function defined here, which is called AVG, or shorthand for average, which takes in as input or an argument some list, any list, right? And it computes the sum of the values, right? But that's not the average. What's the average? And the function always returns something. Okay, the function has to return something.
Some value divided by n.
Yep, great, great. Divided by 7, right? And should this be this or this? Because we discussed this operator as well. So let's stick to the division and not the quotient thing, right? Cool. Okay. So now let's look at it once again and then look at what's the output, right? This here defines, it's a keyword that is reserved by Python. It's the def, right? Remember yesterday I mentioned that there are certain keywords you cannot use to name your variables, like if you cannot use def. Def is another such keyword which is reserved by Python. You know, it's part of the language in which we speak to Python, right? And this defines things. avg is name of the function. That's up to us, we can call it anything, but naming conventions still apply. Sum list, this is the input to the function, right? And then there is an indent here. This is like one tab space or an indent, right? So if you've written any document, you know what indentation is. It's just a space in front of the line, right? Or start of a paragraph. So this indentation tells Python that this particular line of code is a part of the function and not outside the function. The same goes for the return. Again, see, there's an indentation here, right? So it tells Python that this is still a part of the function. And as soon as we escape the indentation, which is we are in input line 22, we are out of the function, right? So let's see what happens to this function. Wow, guys, none of you noticed this. But I messed up. I messed up. The length is 6. Yep, the length is 6. It's not 7. So this should stop at 6. It's very anticlimactic. Okay, spider is doing something absurd. Sorry, people. Let's write this up again, right? I'm just copying this and pasting here. And remember, this is 6 now. Cool. So that works. So I have a sum and I am dividing it by the sum. So any questions on functions?
So what do you mean by sum list here? Is this average function specific to some list
Mhm.
or any list I create? And second question I have, is it
Mhm.
specific to the length of the list we have defined here? Like we have defined this average to be, of 6
Mhm.
elements.
Yep.
So that is also here. And yeah, two questions.
Great. So great points. Thank you for asking that. Um, so the sum list there is an input. What I can do now is I can do my new list, which is now equal to, let's say, I'm copying this again, right? And let's do 1 there, right? And I can call this on my new list and it will do the same thing, compute an average and return it. So in terms of, is it specific to a list? No, it's not specific to a list. But in terms of the second question, and again, before I move on to the second question, pay attention that I can pass any input to the function and it will execute the function on that input. And we'll go into what exactly happens within Python when I'm passing an input. We'll go into that in detail, right? But it executes these same things on that. So you can think of it as some list has been now is now pointing to my new list, and we are computing the sum as an expression and assigning the sum to some value, and we are returning the sum value divided by 6, right? So that's happening. Now coming to the length of the list, yes, this particular function assumes that the length of the list is 6, right? And you can do something else, which is like you can add all the elements and divide it by the length of the list, right? You can also do that, but we'll go into that later. It's a bit advanced for right now. Does that answer it? Both the questions?
Yeah, it doesn't. The first question mein, it is
Mhm.
ki I have taken average of
Mhm.
something, and that
Yeah.
something is to be defined when I actually execute the function.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Any other questions, people, on functions, on the indentation, on the values so far, on why we did what we did? Okay. I'll keep moving forward and I'll go over all of this again in the slides, right? So we got something like that again, right? We have exactly that. So you cannot name a variable sum because sum is reserved by Python again. Sum is one of those keywords just like def or if or return, right? So you see this blue color here. This is purple, blue, pink, something of that nature, this specific color. What this is blue, I think. Yeah. Um, and I hope you see blue because my screen's color is a bit weird. um, it is reserved by Python. So do not name it sum. And that's why I've named it sum value, right? So again, going over the generic nature or the general form of a function definition. Def, this thing says that, okay, we are defining something, Python, get ready. It tells to the Python interpreter. Remember, we spoke about Python interpreter in the last class. If not, go back to those slides once. And we define the function name here, right? This is not a convention we'll use, but it is fine. We can call it your capital F function, capital N name. And then we have different inputs, right, to the function, or as I call them, arguments to the function. You can, let's stick to inputs, right? So you have code here which is indented. Again, indentation means that from the start of the line, there is a difference of a span there. Then there are multiple statements, which essentially says that you're doing a bunch of things with your inputs, right? And maybe you create a new variable here like we did, right? We created a new variable which was some value and we assigned it by assigning it through an expression, right? And that's what happens here. And then we return a variable. So that is the structure of a function. Okay, cool. Does that answer general things in terms of what it means or what, how a function is defined? Or are there any questions there? No questions?
So, so I have a question like first we make
Sure.
a list
Mhm.
and then we work upon it, then we create another list on the same page. So now we are trying to make it a function. So which list is it is going to prefer? Did you got it?
So, no, let me ask you this just to clarify the question a bit. First, we made a list called my list. That's right. Yeah.
Yes, any list we create a list, and then
Yeah.
after working upon it, then we create a new list with the same
Mhm.
name like my list. My list is equal to this.
Yeah.
So then we are going to do the functions, and both the lists are different. So
Yes.
will the Python will take the later one list we have created as the latest one,
So
and will,
when you say we'll create a new list, you will still name it my list. Is that what
yeah,
you're saying, or will you name
yes,
it my new list?
no, my list itself.
My list again. So if you were to do this now, right? Or my list equal to, I'm just copying things to move it faster. This, right? Right?
Yeah,
This is what we are doing, right?
yes, yes, yes.
and we were to call average on my list again. Your question is, will it be 5.666 or not? Again, right?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah.
So this goes back to assignment, right? We can reassign values to the list, and what that helps us do is, or what that tells Python is that now this variable called mylist has a new value. The list has changed, so the average will be different now. Okay, because the mylist thing points to the variable mylist has changed, right? And this is a great point. This is a great point. Like, it's a good question, you know. You guys remember this example, z equals x plus y, and how I changed x but z would not change? People?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, nice. But in this case, it changes because the assignment happens only once, right? Whenever you are doing the assignment, it happens and the value is stored in the computer that, okay, z is so and so, and I could change x eventually, but z will not change. But in a function, every time you call a function, it goes through these same points again and again, right? It runs these lines of code again from scratch, right? And therefore, whenever you reassign a value to the function, to a variable, and call the function again, right, it will do those things again. But assignment happens once, right? You
So
could
like it discard
always,
the previous list. So does
sorry,
it discard the previous list?
yes, as soon as you do this assignment, your other thing is forgotten as far as the Python interpreter is concerned. Your console will still have it, this thing right here. But as far as your Python interpreter is concerned, it has forgotten the previous list. It has overwritten it, rather, not forgotten, overwritten it with this list.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions?
What if I want to overwrite an assignment?
So what you can do is you can assign again, right? So let's do this, people, quickly as an example. Y equals 5, z equals x plus y, right? Z is 15. Now I do x equals 9. Z is still 15 because I haven't done it. Now, what you are asking is, how do I override z equals x plus y again? Oh, sorry, there are a lot of messages there. I'll look at it now. Yeah, so I call this again. Z will be 14, right? So I'll have to call the assignment again in this case, but functions are a bit different.
Saket, hello.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think the way I remember it is it goes in its memory and checks for nth assignment, then n minus 1th assignment, then and so on, right? And is that a good way to remember this?
Not really, I think, because it won't keep a track of what were all the variable assignments through time. It does not do that. But and also, like, going into memory and how exactly that lookup thing works, that I think is much more complicated than just this, right? And although I can see how one would say that, oh, doesn't it like store the sequence of assignments in the memory, but it does not in Python. Yeah. Oh, thanks. I'm just looking at the messages now. So the def here is purple, it's not blue. Yeah. Thanks, Arushi, for that. Cool.
Hi, Saget.
Yeah,
I have a question. Like we
sure.
defined the average sum list, right? We defined the entire formula for it.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we
Mhm.
use we use the number of elements in it in the function itself,
That's right. Yes.
right? So if we create a new list which is higher than it, the elements, the number of elements are more than it in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So will
Mhm.
it show an error, or will we have to again type a new formula for it?
We will have to type a new formula for it again, right? But here's the thing, there are ways of doing it where you don't have to type in a new formula, where you can say that, okay, add up all the elements and divide by the total number of elements, which we'll cover in when we learn about loops. Okay.
Okay.
But that's a good point, that we will have to right now redefine the formula. This formula works only for lists of length 6. Yeah, the average one.
So one more question, like
Mhm.
for making a average form function,
Yeah.
we are writing so long. So like suppose there are 100 elements in a list. So are going
Mhm.
to write every index 0, 1, 2, 200. Like isn't there is any shortcut?
There is a shortcut, and I think we should just like look into that shortcut right now if you guys are up for it. Although I don't have slides ready for it, let's look for it. Cool. Is that okay? Everyone's fine
Yes,
with it?
sure.
Cool. So let's define a function again. Um, let's call it a robust average, right? Is robust the right word? Let's call it a cool average, right? Um, some list again, right? And now what I want to do is I want to do this for item. Oops, let's actually define something else. Some value is equal to 0. Then we do something called a loop, and I'll go into what a loop means exactly. For item in some list, some value is equal to some value plus item. Okay. And I'll go into the indentation, people. Don't worry about the indentation right now, right? Let's do something else here as well. Sorry, sorry for cursing, guys. Cool. All right. Do people see this? So I can go over it now, over the list and over the function and how it works, right? Def, again, I'm defining something. This is the name of the function. This is the input, right? Again, I have an indentation. I'm initializing a variable now. I'm initializing the sum value to 0, right? And I'm initializing the list length to 0. And then what I do is I loop over every item in some list, right? And what that essentially means is that sorry, yeah, here my list, if it's 134792, when I do for item in my list, I will go through all the individual elements, which will be 134791, which basically mean I'll be assigning each one of these values to the variable item and going over them in a loop till the list ends. Okay. How many of you have heard of the word or loop in a coding context before, in a programming context?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, cool. Essentially, a loop is just what it sounds like. You know, you go over something till it ends, right? The loop ends at some point, right? So this is called a for loop. And again, look at this. For is purple, in is also purple, right? So Python kind of knows that, oh, right now, Saket is asking me to loop over the elements in the list and assign the value item to the, uh, assign the value within the list, each value to the variable item. So,
So
what,
item is
yeah.
not something specific to Python, right? I can use any word there.
Mhm. Yeah, you can use any word there. I'm just using item, or you can use
Element.
some number, right? Some
Okay.
number would be a nice variable name, right? Some number, because some list has some numbers in it. Cool. So, and the sum, now the sum is SUM sum. The sum value is now equal to 0. Initially, it's equal to 0 plus, again, let me paste the list here so that we don't have to keep going back up. So when it's at index 0, looping over the list, the assignment of the variable item is 1. Then it's 3. Then it's 4. Then it's 7. Then 9. Then 10. Once it's assigned 1, what do? We do some value plus item. So some value becomes 1, right? And then list length was at 0. So list length also becomes 1. Right? And then we go back to this point, right? We are still here, right? Now item has been assigned the value 3, right? So some value is 1, and then you add 3 to some value, which is 4. So some value becomes 4. And then you go back again, and item is now 4, right? And you keep going back, and also list length is now 2 because you have incremented it by 1, right? Increase list length by 1. So you go up, item is now 4, and you add some value to item. So remember, it was 4 already, the sum value was 4, you add 4, that makes it 8, and then 15, and then 24, and then 34, right? And list length is increased 1 every time you see an item. So what will be list length at the end of the loop? Any guesses?
6.
Yep, 6. And finally, this will be 34 by 6. So there could be an error with it. Please don't judge me, because I do mix up things. Oh, see, it is right. Yeah, cool.
So
So
the
that's the
sum,
cool average. But yeah, go on.
the list length thing we are using here, uh,
Mhm.
it starts with zeroth element, that is 1, or it starts with there is no element in my list.
So when you say that, this one list length, you mean like how are we updating this variable, or how
Yes,
does
yes.
it start with the item? So the variable starts with the length being 0. And remember, length is different from index, right? So the highest index in the list is 5, but the total number of items in the list, which is the length of the list, is 6. So it starts with 0. As soon as you see the first element, your list length is set to 1. When you see the second element at index 1, your list length will be set to 2, right? So this is different from the index thing. Does that answer it?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Cool. So everyone that was curious about whether or not this will work with a list which is not of length 6, right? Let's do some more of these elements. Now let's see again. See, it has changed, right? It is dealing with bigger lists now, or we can make it smaller. It doesn't matter. But essentially what we have done is we have done a for loop, right? And we are almost out of time, people. Any questions on the for loop and this assignment and what's exactly happening here?
So as I understand it, there is
Mhm.
two steps. First is some value list length 00, and then we take a step up, and then we go keep on going with 1, 2, 2, 2 till the end of the list, right?
Yes, we assign these values. These are just variables that we are reassigning, in the sense that we are assigning an initial value to the sum and the length, right? To the sum value and the list length. And then we keep going through these numbers, right? So Mitesh is asking a related question, and that's why I'm bringing it up. What happens if we do not initialize value to 0 before using for? What happens is, remember we saw this error earlier. What happens here, people? A plus B. What will happen now? It will give me an error. A is not defined. So if we do not assign some value, any number, then it will give me an error. Python will say, hey, you're using some value here on the right side of an assignment expression, not the left side. You can use some value on the left side of the assignment expression, that's fine. But you're using some value on the right side of the assignment expression, and you haven't really defined this thing, right? So that becomes an issue. And that will throw an error that Python will tell you that I don't know what this means right now, but you're trying to use it. Cool. So that's why you need the two steps. The first is to assign some value and then to keep updating that value in a loop. Cool. Okay. And again, notice this indentation here. This tells Python that everything that is indented by a tab is within the for loop, and everything that's not indented by a tab is outside the for loop. Okay. So any other questions on the for loop, the function, the cool average function, or any of that?
Yeah. So apart
Mhm.
from two methods that we have seen to take average,
Yeah,
isn't there is any simpler method, any simpler formula like we do in Excel sheet? Like we
yeah.
just put formula and it brings out the average.
Yes,
Apart from loop.
there are definitely functions which are given by Python directly. Okay, to show you an example of one such function would be, so here I'm like, initializing list length to 0 and incrementing it. Instead of that, why don't I just do len, and this gives me the length, which is 10, okay, of this particular list. So that kind of a formula exists. which is like, which are called inbuilt functions of Python. And again, notice this color. You notice the color, it's a bit different from purple. And the color is orange, sort of, right?
Yep.
Yep, it's orange. Cool. I am also colorblind. Fun fact. So, uh, yeah, and that sort of a formula, I don't remember what it is for average. You can look that up, but essentially there are those formulas. But it's very important to go through this particular example of computing average because it tells you a lot more about the language rather than it tells you about computing average, right? That's not the goal. We are not trying to teach you how to compute an average. We are trying to tell you different aspects of the programming language, which is Python. Yeah, cool. I think we
Thank
are out of, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
thank you so much.
Yep.
Salih, can we maybe
Yeah.
go another 5-10 minutes to just do an overview of dictionary?
Yeah, let's do that. So I think function, I'll upload these, and this is an advanced topic and we need not do this right now, but do go through the slides, people, on what is happening here. Okay. But let's do the dictionary thing once. Okay, people. So a new data structure that we'll introduce now is dictionary, right? So lists are kind of a data structure and we have discussed them a lot, right? And we have discussed in detail how lists work, right? And list is just a way of storing information, right? List tells you that, okay, one element comes after the other and then another comes after that till it ends, right? That's what list tells you. We look at another one, which is called Dict Dictionary. So I'm just clearing this thing, right? Clear. Now coming back here. Now, let's say you have something of this nature, right? You have a sentence and you want to count the number of words in that sentence. The cat had the hat sat on, right? As in, those are the words, but the sentence is the cat had a hat, the cat sat on the hat, right? So what this essentially means is that we need to associate each word with a frequency. The comes thrice. That's the frequency of the. It just means how many times it comes up. So you have keys and you have values, right? So remember, we are associating each word with the frequency, which means that we are associating keys with values, right? Sorry. And these are called the key value pairs, right? You have the and the value is 3, right? And this is essentially the dictionary. Anything with key value pairs, you can think of it as a dictionary. In dictionaries, in the colloquial sense, you have a word and you have the meaning. But here you can have a key and you can have a value, right? So keys can be any basic type. By basic, I mean one of these, which we have discussed, which are like int, uh, string, float, right? We discussed that in the previous lecture. We had types and we had a few basic types. List is not one of those. Boolean is a basic type. Boolean, int, string, float. These are the basic types that we have discussed so far. And list is not a basic type because list is a data structure, right? So string value can be integer, right? And this is another type of a dictionary where the key is string, but let's not go into that right now in interest of time. Cool. Let's see how dictionaries are defined straight away. Okay. Word frequency dictionary, let's call it that. This should be capital, people. Okay. This is an empty dictionary. This is how you define an empty dictionary. Now, say I wanted to define something with a single element in it. The comes how many times once again in this sentence? 3 times, right? This has a single element, which is the. And how do I access the elements of the value of the key, the within this dictionary? I do this square bracket thing. Remember, in list we were doing the square bracket thing to get an index. Here we are doing square bracket thing to refer to a key, right? In list you could index from, you could go from the index, which is 0 to length -1 to the value. Here you can go from key to the value using square brackets, right? Does that make sense? Now let's complicate this dictionary a little bit. I'm just copying this again. And cat was 2, right? If I check for cat, this gives me 2, right? That's the word frequency dictionary. Now let's say I check for had. What happens now? As expected, it will give me an error because I have not put had in there, right? And I can do that now. And again, I'm just pressing the up button. Pressing the up button takes you to the console input we had given a few steps back, right? And that's why it's changing so fast. And I press enter, and that gives me 1, right? And that's what a dictionary does. It maps from a key to a value, right? And that's why we use dictionaries. And in the assignment, you will see um, why we need dictionaries and what is the usage of a dictionary, and especially in terms of what you guys do, like when you're analyzing a lot of text, you need dictionaries. You absolutely need that.
Just one quick point. Sorry. So,
Yeah.
like when you were modifying the dictionary, how can we add a new element without having to list all the previous elements?
Yep, great point. So let's say now we want to add something here, right? I'm just copying it again to keep things easy. You can do other things as well. Say I want to add the word right? So all I need to do is this, right? Equals 1. And now I can look at the dictionary. What does it look like? Sorry, or rather, what's the value from index? It's 1. And what does the dictionary look like? It's the cat had right? So it has all these elements now. Does that cover it? Anyone else? Any questions on dictionary? What does it do?
So we defined a dictionary, elements of dictionary by curly brackets, and we recall it by square brackets.
Yes, yes, exactly. That's the difference from the list. In list, we had
Okay.
square brackets on either side, right? In dictionary, we say that, you have curly brackets on either side and you have this key colon value kind of a notation, right? This thing. But you can also assign values using this. Yeah. Any other questions on dictionaries?
how do we remove an entry from the list?
Nice. Yep. Yep. Sure. Sure. Give me a second, people. So there are multiple ways, right? We can do it in two ways, but I'm thinking which is the best way. Let's consider just removing an element, right? Okay, the is gone. So again, notice this is purple, word frequency dictionary, the, right? So I'm just deleting an element from the dictionary. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, which we'll not cover right now, is to use something called the pop function. Like, I won't go into the details, but this is it. Again, let's pick an element, can. Okay, the element is gone, but pop, it also returns the element, right? Delete had no output, right? But pop has an output. So if I technically wanted to do this, right, num had equals dot pop, I can do this. Sorry, I'm going to the end. Yeah, I can do this now. Cool. So now num had will still have my value, but the dictionary will not have the value. So you can use either one of those. Or if you want to override something, right? Let's say what's in the dictionary right now, just is in the dictionary, right? So it's at 1 right now. The value is set to 1. Now, if I want to override it to 10, I can do that. And now if we look at the dictionary, it's just a pointing to the value 10. So those are all the operations you can do. You can delete elements, you can reassign, you can add elements, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. Any other questions on this?
So addition works by one element at a time, but removing, that removes the all the entries.
No. While we were removing this, right? Del word frequency, the word frequency dictionary, the, it only removed a single element, right? It only removed a single element. So deletion works single element at a time as well. Any other questions
In line
on dictionary?
59,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have the, and in 958 we removed the, so, and
Mm-hmm.
57 we have the three times.
Oh, we don't have the 3 times.
Right, we
That's
should
the
have the
thing.
two times at least, right? In 59.
No, I am sorry. I'm sorry. That is not what it means. We don't have the 3 times. What we have is a key value pair. The key the points to the value 3, right? It
Uh,
points to the value 3. And when you pop the key the, or when you delete the key the, what it does is that it says, okay, delete this entry, or when I say entry, it means that delete this mapping from key to value, where key is the and value is 3, right? Just delete it. So all of this goes away. It doesn't know that when I'm deleting it, I'll delete only one, right? It deletes the whole pairing. So for example, you could have word meaning dictionary, monkey, primate, sometimes orange. Cool. Now, if I say delete word, let's look at the dictionary once, people, right? And when I say delete monkey, what will it do? It will remove the pairing. Okay. Again, I press the up button, word meaning dictionary. It's empty now, right? So it deletes the pairing from the key to the value. The value can be a string, it can be of any type, like we discussed. And here in this case, the is the key and the value is 3. So it deletes the pairing from the key to the value. Yeah. Does that clarify it? Arshad, does that clarify your question? Hello? Okay, he's dropped off, but I hope that clarifies it for other people. Other people, folks, last chance for questions on dictionary. Anything is fine. Feel free to ask stuff.
So dictionary is an equivalent of data frames. Is my understanding correct?
Hmm. uh, Not really, not really. Data frame has rows and columns in it to some extent, right? And again, not always they'll have rows and columns, but data frame is a different kind of tabular data structure. Dictionary is also a tabular data structure with um, sort of one um, or just two columns, right? That's what dictionary does. The first column is key and the second column is the value. But it's not exactly the same. And the differences will become clearer as you use more and more of dictionary. Yeah. I know it doesn't answer it, but my answer is you'll find out why they're not the same eventually. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Any other questions on dictionary? If not, I think this is a good place to stop. We have gone over the for loop. We have discussed the dictionary.